Suzuki, and he's up against Chris Ensor in the lane furthest from the camera there. Well, they're away together. Don't forget, we're racing over the quarter mile once again on Ultimate Street Bike, and it's Emery who takes the win with a 9.8 at 148 miles per hour. Next pair coming up to the line, Gary Westerby, number 167, up against Chris Richards. Chris Richards furthest away from the camera. And here we go, moving them up into the staging beams. As Chris Richards furthest away from the camera, Gary Westerby close to the camera, moving up into the start line sequence. And it's Richards away first, but then the little wheelie there from Westerby really turns on the power, goes through the quarter and takes the win at 10.11, shutting down Chris Richards at 10.20. Our next pair, closest to the camera, John Bent on the Suzuki. And furthest away from the camera, Chris Easter. John Bent, number 52, footing the bike up into the start line. So here we go, waiting for that start line sequence to begin.
With a 9.76. So all of these Ultimate Street Bikers really close during their qualifying. Suzuki against Kawasaki, the number 2 qualifier in the left-hand lane. So here we go, into the staging beam.
So here we go, building up the revs now between these two. Bent closest to the camera, Easter furthest away, and it's Bent all the way from the start line there. A massive wheelie for Chris Easter, but it's John Bent who takes the win, 9.58, shutting down Chris Easter at 9.97. Well, our next pair coming up to the line, Ron Russell. Comes from Scotland, now lives down south, as he has great fun in telling me all the time. Ron Russell up against Fraser Coughlin. Ron Russell closest, of course, to the camera. Coughlin on his Katana, furthest away from the camera. And once again, bringing both the bikes into the staging beams, ready to start that start line sequence. And it's Russell away first. Coughlin bogging a little bit on the start line there, but Ron Russell takes a convincing win, 9.79 at 151 miles per hour. Fraser Coughlin losing out, 10.66 at 117. Next run then, it's Beck against Webster. And Beck closest to the camera. Chris Webster, the man furthest away from the camera, who's the man who's been running these very high terminal speeds at Ultimate Street Bike, quickest of which has been 161 miles per hour. Has he got the power here to see off Gary Beck? And that's the power at the top end. You can see Chris Webster really going through the top end, taking the win at 9.43 at 153 miles per hour, shutting down Gary Beck's 10.47 at 136. Next pair, Bill Hunter in the lane furthest away from the camera, up against the Z1B Kawasaki of Dave Ennis. Well, can Bill Hunter get back into the Ultimate Street Bike elimination? He's been missing for such a long time. Can he see off the Kawasaki of Dave Ennis with his Spondon Turbo? Here they go, up into the staging beams. Both riders easing their bikes in. Ennis is in stage, waiting for Hunter to get in. You can see these lights appearing on the Christmas tree, telling the riders when they're in stage. And it's a red light. Hunter pulls a red light. So it's Ennis who goes through into the next round with a run of 9.83, 140 miles per hour. Well, lots of surprises taking effect in this first Ultimate Street Bike elimination. This is Gary Kenley here on this really nicely turned out Schweppes machine. Gary's been doing a little bit of riding and advertising for you know who. But here he comes. He's supposed to be up against Mr. Giddings, but he hasn't shown. So it's going to be a solo run through for Gary Kenley. And he does that quite convincingly too. 9.60, 151 miles per hour. Well, we move on to Super Street, the quarterfinals. And it's John Bent, isn't he having a busy day? Back out again, running against Brian Emery. Well, these are two of our really top men, both in Ultimate Street Bike and Super Street. And it's going to be interesting to see who gets to the top end first. We're back to running over the 8th again, and it's Emery out of the traps first, and just holding on right the way through the quarter. It's Brian Emery takes the win with a 5.91 at 121 miles per hour. Next pair coming out to run, Dominic Farley furthest away from the camera, Andy Tiskovich closest to the camera, and it's Farley away first, but as Tiskovich got the power to turn him back, he does. It's Tiskovich who goes through the 8th first, 6.64 at 108 miles per hour. Well, John Boy Messenger not had an awful lot of luck here today. Now back out into the quarterfinals of Super Street, running against Kevin Harris. Well, I wonder whether we're going to see John Boy start making his way up an elimination ladder. Kevin Harris furthest from the camera. John Boy away first. This looks convincing. And it's John Boy right the way through the 8th, taking the win, 6.29. And he'll be meeting the winner of this next pair in the semi-finals. Well, furthest away from the camera, Phil Herndon. Phil Herndon on his Suzuki. And closest to the camera, Chris Easter on the newly painted Kawasaki. Well, it's going to be close between these two. They had qualifying times over the 8th of 6.42 for Herndon, 6.30 for Easter. But it's Easter who just gets to the top 8th mile marker first with a run of 6.39 at 120 miles per hour. Well, we move back on with the big boys, and this time around it's Pro Stock quarterfinals. The man closest to the camera, Jack Valentine, the current European Pro Stock champion and the #1 qualifier here at Avon Park. And the man in the lane furthest from the camera cannot believe his bad luck. That's Steve Watson, doing so well this weekend on the Ultimate Street Bike Suzuki, and he looked so crestfallen when he heard that he'd pulled Jack Valentine in the first round. Well, let's see how he gets on. So Valentine from V&M Racing, that engineering firm in Rochdale, up against Steve Watson. Steve Watson furthest from the camera, and here they come, building the revs up as they move the bikes into the staging beams. Well, Steve Watson's only chance here really is to get a huge hole shot over Jack Valentine and hold on to that. So really winding on the power now, and they're away together, but just look at Jack Valentine go. And it's Valentine who takes a convincing win with 5.48 at 135 miles per hour. Next pair then, Nigel Dowding, closest to the control tower, against Cole Rule. Cole Rule is the partner of Chris Hampson in the JCB team, and he malfunctions on the line. Got some problems there for Cole Rule. Nigel Dowding goes through with a 5.61 at 128 miles an hour, and Cole Rule's going to be pretty upset with that. Next pairing then, Len Paget, our truck mechanic from Southampton, on his Suzuki closest to the camera, up against Mark Wanstall, and Wanstall pulls a red light on the tree, but Paget doesn't know this, and Paget goes for it, cracking in a time of 5.63 at 126 mile an hour. He meets Jack Valentine in the next round, and this round it's Paul Willis against Tim Brierley, and a great start there from Willis nets him the win with a 5.53 at 135 miles per hour. Well, we move back onto that massive 32 bike field, and we're now into the final 16 in Ultimate Street Bike. This is Richard Prosser, closest to the camera, up against Dave Thackeray. And it's Thackeray away first. And racing over the quarter mile once more, it's Thackeray who takes the win with a 9.68. As we move on to our next pair, Len Clark, number 226. Len Clark on the Kawasaki up against Derek Furlong in the lane furthest from the camera. And it's Len Clark all the way, taking the win, 10.57 at 128 miles per hour. Our next pair get ready to run. Burning out closest to the camera, Graham Bouchin got through into this round with a 9.92. And he's running up against a really rough-sounding Steve Ashby, who got through into this round with a 10.29. So Bouchin heads off down towards the start line, but where is Steve Ashby? Is he going to make it to the start line? He doesn't. So it's a through run then for Graham Bouchin into the next round with a time of 10.07 at 142 miles per hour. Well, our next pair get ready to run. John Henderson closest to the control tower on the Suzuki. He meets Dean Williamson in this round. Dean Williamson, the man who got through on the bye run. John Henderson got through to this round with a run of 10.45. Dean Williamson's qualifying time was 10.19. So here they go, moving up into the staging beams. Who's going to meet Graham Bouchin in the next round? And it's Williamson away first, still pulling wheelies. Henderson fights back, but going towards a quarter mile. It's Williamson who just sneaks in front, takes the win, 10.39. Our next pair burning out, getting ready to run. Closest to the camera, Tony Arnold. Tony Arnold, who qualified with a 9.94. And he's up against another Tony. Tony Kershaw in the lane furthest away from the camera. Tony Kershaw qualified with a 10.13. Arnold had got through into this round with a 10.17 and Kershaw with a 10.30. So over the quarter mile, these two are very close. Both have terminal speeds in excess of 140 miles an hour. And has Tony Arnold got some problems? There's a little leak there for Tony Arnold, and he's got to be sidelined. Well, what a great shame for him, a great competitor, Arnold, and he'll be really ill with that result. So it's Kershaw who goes through into the next round and puts in a great run, Tony Kershaw, 9.85. So that sets him up well for the next elimination. Well, our next pair is Suzuki side by side. Closest to the camera, Dave Turner. Dave Turner, who qualified with a 10.05, got through into this round with a 10.78, up against Jared Frost. Frost qualified with a 10.22, got through into this round with a 10.19. So these two should be really close over the quarter mile. Here we go, moving up into the staging beams. And it's Frost away first, and they're both pulling wheelies as they go. But at the top end, it's Turner who takes the win, 10.39 at 136 miles per hour. John McKean then on the supercharged Suzuki. He's meeting Dominic Farley in this round. Dominic on the small 750 Suzuki. A real David and Goliath battle here. John McKean got through into this round with a 10.33. Farley, much to his credit, 10.45 in this round. So let's see who's going to get to the top end, David or Goliath. Don't forget Farley furthest away from the camera, and Farley away first, just a wheel out in front as they leave the start line. But the power of that supercharged Suzuki telling as McKean takes the win, 9.92 at 136 miles per hour. Mark Watkins going with the rolling burnout there. He meets James Cormack in this round. Qualifying times for Watkins were 10.55 and for Cormack 10.37. So Watkins sitting patiently there looking to see where Cormack is. Well, these two again should be very, very close on the quarter mile. Just easing into those staging beams now. Mark Watkins got through into this round with a 10.43, but his opponent isn't there. James Cormack didn't show, so it's Watkins who goes through to meet McKean in the next round with a run of 10.88 at 111 miles per hour. Well, we move on to the Ultimate Street Bike quarterfinals, and it's Gary Kenley against Ken Taylor. Well, Gary Kenley got through into this round with a run of 9.60. Ken Taylor got through into this round with a run of 9.52. So these two really, really close on the quarter mile still, don't forget. And they're away together. But look at the power of Kenley's bike as he pulls away there. And it's Kenley who takes the win. Kenley gives us a time there of 9.74 terminal speed, 149 miles per hour. Our next pair then, Brian Emery. Brian got through into this round with a 9.8 at 148 mile an hour, up against Gary Westerby in the far lane, who got through with a run of 10.44 at 140 miles per hour. Well, it all points to the man in the lane closest to the camera to take the win. But this is drag racing, and Westerby is away first, but Emery powers back and goes through the quarter mile. It's Emery taking the win with 9.66 at 151 miles per hour. Well, our next pair get ready to run. And how many times have we seen John Bent in this lane? Number 52. John Bent got through into this round with a run of 9.58. He's up against the Scotsman, young Ron Russell, who got through into this round with a run of 9.79. So here we go, moving these two up into the staging beams. Ron Russell, as usual, crouched right down across it, and you can see Ron physically pushing the bike forward, but it's not going to be enough. It's John Bent who takes the win with 9.58 at 144 miles an hour. Talk about consistent. Well, this time around it's Webster, Chris Webster, closest to the camera against Dave Ennis. Ennis on the Z1B Kawasaki, furthest from the camera. Ennis got through with a run of 9.83. Webster got through with a run of 9.43. So it's Ennis who's got all the work to do. That 2/5 of a second between these two on their last runs really does give Chris Webster that advantage, but it's Ennis out of the hole first, but he seems to lose a little bit of traction there, and it's Webster, the man with the big terminal speed, who gets to the top end first with a run of 9.74 at an incredible 156 miles per hour. Well, this is the field of bikes that started off numbering 32, and we're now down to the quarter-finals. Closest to the camera, the man who got through with a run of 9.68 is Dave Thackeray, and furthest away is Len Clark, who got through with a run of 10.57. So it all points to this man, Dave Thackeray, taking the win here, unless Len Clark can pull something out of the bag. But no, it's going according to the form book. Dave Thackeray all the way, taking the win and earning himself a place in the semi-finals with 10.33 at 147. Closest to the camera then, Graham Bouchin. He got through into this round with a run of 10.03 up against the man furthest away from the camera, Dean Williamson, who got through with a 10.39. Once again, the man with lane choice is Graham Bouchin. He's taken this lane closest to the camera, and it's Dean Williamson who's got all the work to do if he's going to try and beat or even stay with Graham Bouchin. But once again, it's running to the form book. Bouchin out of the traps first and leading all the way to the finish line, 10.34 at 136 miles per hour. John McKean, closest to the camera, again the man with lane choice selecting this lane, got through with a run of 9.92 up against Mark Watkins in the furthest lane. He got through with a run of 10.88. So once again, we've got the same race against the form book here. Can Mark Watkins pull something out of the bag and shut down John McKean? John McKean really working well this weekend, but look at the power of that supercharged Suzuki. Just pulls lengths out in front and takes the win with a run of 9.84 at 138 miles per hour. Well, our final pair in this quarter-final session, closest to the control tower, Tony Kershaw, who got through with a run of 9.85. Dave Turner, the man in the far lane, got through with a run of 10.39. So all the people with the quick times who had lane choice have chosen the lane closest to the camera. So it's Kershaw and Turner. And it's Dave Turner with all his work cut out to try and beat Tony Kershaw. You can see him really turning on the power, lifting the front wheel, but it's Kershaw all the way. Kershaw goes through into the semi-finals with a run of 10.17 at 142 miles per hour. Well, we're into the quarter-finals of two-stroke twin. And closest to the camera, Wayne Keeling on this multi-coloured LC. Well, he got through into this round with a run of 13.94, and he's up against the favourite, Harry Barlow, who got through with a bye run. 11.71 was his time, and it's Barlow all the way. Barlow takes the win, 11.20, and goes through into the next round as Jeff Marshall and Ken Wildman prepare to run, and Ken Wildman goes, Jeff Marshall pulls a red light. So it's Ken Wildman who takes the win, 12.8, slowing at the top end to 85 miles per hour as Vernon Hickson and Stephen John go for it side by side, and getting to the top end first, it's Stephen John with a run of 11.73 at 109 miles per hour. Chris Nutter, furthest from the camera, should have been racing against Roy Barton but it doesn't look as though Roy Barton's shown. He's broken, so Chris Nutter solos through, knows he won't get lane choice in the semi-final, and just cruises through 19.9. Well, two-stroke open, and the favourite, Bill Calcutt, gets shut down by Steve Pollock. Steve Pollock taking the win there, 11.74 at 108 miles per hour. As the next pair come to run, Chris Spry closest to the camera up against Alan Tinian, and it's Spry who takes the win, 10.89 at 131 miles per hour. Our next pair getting ready to run, closest to the camera, Dave Alloway up against Pete Redhead, and it's Redhead all the way from the start line. He takes the win with a run of 11.30 at 117 miles an hour. And our final pair, John Kuhn closest to the camera up against Duncan Reid, and going through into the semi-final, Duncan Reid takes the win with a time of 11.52 at 120 miles per hour. Well, four-stroke twin, we've got Odgie, and Odgie here seen taking the win, 12.03 over Brian Allen Ross, gets him into the next round, as Jim Clayton and Mick Nutter come out to run. And Jim Clayton, not for once on his Ducati, but on a Laverda, still takes the win with a run of 13.49 at 98 miles per hour. Well, closest to the camera, Ian Thomas, setting out behind Roy White. Roy White in the lane furthest from the camera. Four-stroke twin, don't forget. And it's Ian Thomas who gets to the top end first, 13.26 at 102 mile an hour. As our final pair come out to run, Yamaha against Triton, and it's the Yamaha of Dick Cheetham sees down Bob Cornforth with a run of 12.40 at 104 miles per hour. This is the semi-finals of the big boys. It's Pro Stock. Closest to the camera, it's Jack Valentine. Furthest away, it's Len Padgett. A lot of people will be looking forward to this, and Padgett's away first. But look at the power of Jack Valentine. Jack Val gets to the top end of the 8th mile. 5.26 sees him into the final, and he's up against this man, Paul Willis, who should have been running in this round against Nigel Dowding, and Dowding doesn't show. So it's Willis and Valentine in the final. And this is the semi-final of Super Street. Brian Emery and Andy Tiskowicz, and it's Emery who takes the win, 6.29, sees him into the final. Chris Easter, furthest from the camera, up against John Boy Messenger, and here they go, building the revs up on the start line. Who is it going to be? Is John Boy going to make it into the final of something? And he does, right the way from the start line. It's John Boy, 6.16 at 123 miles per hour. As we move into the funny bike semi-finals, it's teammates Graham Nash against Paul Willis, and it's Paul Willis who takes a surprising win with a run of 5.20, shutting down his teammate Graham Nash with that track record holding machine. And this pair, it's Dave Cross against Chris Hampson, and it's Cross who sees off Chris Hampson with a run of 4.86. We move on to the two-stroke twin semi-finals, and it's Harry Barlow against Chris Nutter. Barlow closest to the camera. So here they go, moving up into the staging beams. Is it going to be another win for Harry Barlow? He's got to be the favourite here. And yes, he forges ahead back over the quarter mile once more. And it's Barlow takes the win, 11.16 at 120 miles an hour, gets him into the final. And it's a solo run through for Ken Wildman. Nobody to race against him. It's Ken Wildman who solos through with a 12.18 at 105, and he meets Barlow in the final. Well, we move on with the semi-finals of two-stroke open, and our first pair up to the line, Pete Redhead closest to the camera, Duncan Reid furthest away from the camera. Redhead got through into this round with 11.30. Reid got through with 11.52, and problems for Reid on the start line allows Redhead to go all the way through in the lead, taking the win with 11.59 at 121 miles per hour. And our other pair, Chris Spry, closest to the camera, up against Steve Pollock. And once again, it's Spry, sees his way through into the final with a run of 11.30 at 126 miles per hour. It's the semi-finals of the four strokes, and it's Odgie closest to the camera, up against Ian Thomas. And this is an all-British semi-final here, both on Triumph machines. So Thomas further away, got through with a run of 13.26. Odgie got through with a run of 12.03, and right from the start line, it's Odgie taking the win with 12.21 at 105 miles per hour. In the other semi, it's Dick Cheetham against Jim Clayton. Dick Cheetham on the Yamaha, and it's Cheetham all the way to the finish line, 12.74 at 102. Well, this is the semi-final of what started off as our 32 bike field. Dave Thackeray against Graham Bouchin, and it's Thackeray away first, Bouchin charging hard. Who's going to get into the final here? And it's Bouchin who sneaks the win at the top end. As our next pair run, Tony Kershaw and John McKean, and it's McKean all the way to go into the final to meet Graham Bouchin. This is the Ultimate Street Bike semi-finals. Gary Kenley in the lane furthest from the camera, up against Brian Emery. This is going to be one to savour. Gary Kenley really turning on the power, but Brian Emery keeps that front wheel firmly on the ground, taking the win with a run of 9.52. He's in the final. Who's he going to meet? Either Chris Webster or John Bent, and it looks as though it's going to be Bent. Bent in this lane, closest to the camera once more. He takes the win with a run of 9.44 at 151 miles per hour. Well, we're into the finals. Here we go with the two-stroke twin final, and it's Harry Barlow furthest from the camera against Ken Wildman. Both machines, both Yamahas. So who's it going to be? Who's going to take the win here? Wildman got through with a 12.18. Barlow got through with 11.16. It all points to Harry Barlow taking the win, and he noses further and further out in front to go across the finish line, 11.42 at 107 miles per hour. Two-stroke open. Chris Spry closest to the camera. Chris Spry up against Pete Redhead, and it's Spry all the way from the start line taking the win, 10.99 at 131 miles per hour. The final of four-stroke twin sees Odgie up against Dick Cheetham. Cheetham out of the traps first, but he cannot hold the power of that mighty triumph of Odgie. Odgie taking the win, 12.15 at 105 miles per hour. So it's the pro stock final. Jack Val closest to the camera up against Paul Willis. And Willis out of the traps first, but Valentine powers by him, takes the win, 5.31 at 133 miles per hour. As we move into the final of Super Street, it's Brian Emery against John Boy Messenger. And from the start line, it's John Boy, and looks as though something has gone wrong with his bike, but Brian Emery powers back, takes the win, 5.93 at 121. Competition bike final. It's Kevin Marshall against Steve Woolett, and it's the Kawasaki fuel-burning Woolett who takes the win, 5.27 at 149 miles per hour. As the final of Funny Bike comes into camera shot, it's Paul Willis against Dave Cross, and very, very close between those two. It's Dave Cross takes the win at 4.88, 145 miles per hour. And this is the final of our 32 bike field. Closest to the camera, John McKean, Graham Bouchin furthest away from the camera, and it's Bouchin all the way. Graham Bouchin takes the win, 10.04, shutting down McKean's 10.17. And here's the big one. It's the final of Ultimate Street Bike. Brian Emery against John Bent. Who's going to be the 1989 Ultimate Street Bike champion? These two were the finalists, and so close together, but it's Emery who just gets to the top end first with a time of 9.19, 151 miles per hour. Let's watch that again and savour it. And what a way to win a final with a record-breaking ET lowest of the year at 9.195.